Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pail, steel toe boots.
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure. Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I close it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do? Hey, Bobby Manning here from TD Garden. Sherrod Blakely alongside. Noa Dalzell joining us soon from the Garden after the Celtics beat the Raptors 126-123 in overtime here. An unexpectedly thrilling game, given that everyone on the Raptors is out. Drew Holiday sits for the Celtics, and it ends up being a back-and-forth game. At one point, Sherrod, I had how many lead changes? Ridiculous amount in this one. Ridiculous amount of tie game.
On the north side of 20. Yeah.
Jakob Poeltl scored, what are we talking about, 35 in 37 minutes for Toronto. And then Jayson Tatum, after missing as good of a look as you'll get at a game winner at the end of regulation, I think Mitchell or someone fell in front of him. Mm-hmm. He hits a three. Was it a three to end the game there?
Yeah, deep three.
A deep three. Said he got distracted by Brown getting knocked over to his side there. And again, I was getting nervous, Sherrod. They were taking a little bit. The clock was going under a second. He tosses up a really tough shot, and this time it goes in. And so much needed game winner for Tatum after a couple misses to start this year. I can't even remember the last one he hit. It's been a tough shot for him going back a little while here, especially in tie game situations like it was there. But huge shot, huge moment, and maybe something that gets him going on a tear here. I mean, it was a great game for him with 24 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists. Once again, 1 stat point short of a triple-double.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, there's a lot to like about, what Tatum was able to do, particularly, at the end of the game, obviously. But Bobby, this is a game that it really, I think, amplified some of the concerns that are present and dangerous for this Celtics team, particularly second chance points. Toronto, we know coming into the game, they're one of the best, if not the best team in terms of generating second chance points and second chance opportunities. But the Celtics, they have to be better than this. I mean, this was a team that the Celtics really, this is the worst team record-wise in NBA. And if you didn't know better, you'd think that this was a playoff caliber team, a team that the Celtics might be having to look over their shoulders about. To me, this game is a reminder that there are certain matchups that when you look at the guys that the Celtics have been able to kind of navigate successfully without having in a mix, at some point it's going to bite them in the ass. And this was another one of those games where having someone that could, basically force Poeltl to be, actually have to defend away from the basket, maybe make him work a little bit harder. They needed someone like that. This was another game where Porzingis really could have helped you a lot. Not so much in terms of his scoring and rebounding, but just his presence on the floor. That's really, I think, at this point, when you're watching games where their front court isn't as impactful as they need to be, they're lacking a presence in that front court that can just really change the way that teams are calculating how to defend the Celtics and force those teams to recalibrate a little bit. And that's just not happening. And it's probably not going to happen until Porzingis comes back to the mix.
Yeah, and they need it. They tried Queta to start the game. They didn't like it. Second half, he got a quick pull too. Cornette wasn't much better. So both of them with rough games defensively here, although Queta with the big block on Barrett, 10 to overtime there. They went with Cornette and Hauser to start overtime for about 3.5 minutes, and then they went back to the starting duo there. So a big game for Horford. He hit a ton of threes in this one. 5 of 10 finishes with his biggest offensive game of the year. A great driving baseline and one as well through the course of this game. And again, the lead was going back and forth throughout this game. Toronto runs, Celtics runs. Pritchard had a great first half run off the bench that got them going after another slow start here. But, to your point on the inside play, Sherrod, I've been talking about it all year so far. They are struggling immensely to protect the paint. I know Poeltl's a unique challenge with his physicality, and he's got that shot put floater going, and he just had everything going here tonight. So this is a ridiculous game from him. But this wasn't a rare or off occurrence to start the year for the Celtics. I think Raptors shot 9 of 11 in the paint area, restricted area in the third quarter. Kept pummeling the paint with Barrett throughout. Barrett shot 10 of 27 for this one. 15 assists, 10 rebounds, and 25 points. So he was just driving and scoring at will for a lot of this one. And the Celtics just couldn't keep Toronto out of the paint. I mean, this is a game, Sherrod, where the Celtics hit 21 threes. The Raptors hit 9 threes, and it was a tie game with 1 second left in overtime. So they just pummeled the Celtics in the paint, and I really don't know what they can do at this point. They're not going to go to Tillman. He's not much of a rim protector anyway. Cornet and Queta are struggling to get the job done. Horford at center by himself is struggling to get the job done. So they just don't have rim protection right now until Porzingis comes back.
Yeah, and your point about the three-point shooting, Bobby, that was it should have been expected. I mean, Toronto is the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA in terms of percentage. They're bottom 5 there in terms of 3 points made, 3 points attempted. They are very much looking up at everyone else, and so that's not that surprising. But the calculus that the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla and most NBA coaches have made is that threes over the long haul are going to outperform and outpace teams that lean on twos. And this was a game where, again, I think they'll look at this as a bit of an anomaly in terms of the struggles that they have putting this team away, despite them not being a three-point shooting team. And obviously the Celtics are on a torrid pace when it comes to three-point shooting. But again, it's a reminder of how the Celtics, in terms of their vulnerability to losing to teams that they shouldn't, is at its, I think, peak right now because of the fact that they've got so many guys, not a lot of guys, they got key guys who are not healthy or part of the load management crew. And that's, they're going to have to find ways to win these games. That's the only way they're going to be able to really make this all work out in the end, which to them, working out in the end means getting back to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and our producer Jackson Tolliver, letting us know the last Tatum buzzer beater was the Brooklyn finish in Game 1 in 2022, which was a great moment too here. But especially in those tie game situations, it's been a struggle. And let me pull a John here, Sherrod, since I'm in the host seat.
Oh
I'm in
boy,
the John chair. I don't like the shot. I don't.
No, it was a horrible shot. I mean, but I will say this: if the score is tied, it's the kind of shot that you can live with whether it goes in or not, because you know that if it doesn't go in, you're just going to another overtime. But I wish there would have been something that looked like legitimate action being run, whether it's some, just 2-man game with Jalen, some high pick and roll action, just something that doesn't look like here's the ball. Jayson, dribble, take a contested or fadeaway 3 from 35 feet away. And he was right about Jaylen Brown stumbling. That was kind of distracting.
He came around a screen, yeah. So I don't know if that was a diversion or they're actually going to look to get Jaylen the ball there, but he fell. So Tatum had to fire it up. So maybe they had a different play going there and it just got blown up.
Right. And I think that – I don't know what the play was, obviously, but I do think that they did have something set up. And to me, the logical thing to do in that situation was just really create 2-man game with Tatum and Brown and just have Brown either set the screen for Tatum or just, roll to the basket or roll to, the elbow or something like that. But just force Toronto to have to make some really tough late game decisions and not just allow them just kind of set up their defense and just play off of that. But again, you can't really defend Tatum much better than how he was defended on that final shot, because from where he shot and based on how he'd been shooting up to that point, you'll live with that shot if you're Toronto or any other team. You absolutely will be comfortable with Jayson Tatum taking a 30-plus foot jumper with the score tied. And especially if you're lightly contesting it and the clock is winding down. There are so many elements of that final play that conventional wisdom tells you this is not going to work out for the Celtics. But give Jayson Tatum credit. I mean, that was his moment to deliver for his team, and he did exactly that.
Yeah, and he's a tough shot maker. That's what it comes down to. And we've said it a million times because we've discussed this particular moment, this particular play a million times. In a tie game, they're just not going to go to the basket. They don't want to turn it over. They don't want to give it to the other team to have a shot the other way. The Raptors did have a timeout, I think, because they won that challenge, which was a risky one. They only had one timeout left when Pirtle originally got called tipping out of bounds and ended up off Queta. So they did have a timeout if the Celtics lost the ball somehow there or missed with time left on the clock. So that's why they toss up a 3 in those situations, and it hasn't worked. a lot of the time. Didn't work at the end of regulation, but it worked here for Tatum, who hit a really tough shot to end this game and send the Celtics to 11-3 on the season. We've talked about the inside troubles. It's only going to get more difficult for the Celtics defense going up against Cleveland, who could be undefeated coming here on Tuesday. And whether it's that game, probably the biggest game of the early season here at TD Garden, or any game going on, Pats in action at Gillette tomorrow at 1 o'clock against the Rams. You got all kinds of Bruins action going on here. They're changing over the court as we speak, concerts and events, all available over at the Game Time app, where you can see where you're sitting with panoramic views. All in pricing, tells you exactly what you're going to pay. And you have plenty of flash and zone deals going on all the time over there on the Game Time app. So download the app, create an account today, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Go check out the Game Time app and use that code CLNS. And it's Sunday, just about here. We're about to turn to midnight in football on Sunday, and nothing's better than Prize Picks football on a Sunday. All kinds of games, all kinds of star players in action on Sunday afternoon. And all you got to do, if your fantasy team's in shambles, make a new one. One day fantasy, it's all you need on football Sunday. Go over there, pick 2 or more players, pick more or less on their stat projections. It's that easy over on the Prize Picks app. And right now, when you play $5, you're going to get $50 instantly over there with the promo code CLNS. You all got injuries on your fantasy teams. I know you do. Sherrod and myself, it's been up and down season in our CLNS league, but that's the best part of Prize Picks. You can pick a new team every week, and injury insurance keeps your team in play even if someone gets hurt in the first half. That's the best part of Prize Picks. So go over there and use that code CLNS. Play $5, get $50 instantly, and all kinds of great free squares going on all the time over there too. So we'll let you know when those come out. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. So, Sherrod, who do you want to talk about next here? We're going to have Noa Dalzell joining us after Joe Mazzulla, who should be speaking shortly here. I'll hold it down even as the Garden starts to come apart out here. So I'll jump on mute every once in a while. But what else stood out to you from this one, Sherrod?
Well, I thought Jaylen Brown, the way he handled himself with 5 fouls there late in the game in OT, I thought that was really important. The shot making that I thought really had an impactful game in a very difficult, portion of the game in terms of needing to step up defensively, but doing so with being in foul trouble. I thought he was really, really good. And from the free throw line, he was great. One of his better games. I thought his aggressiveness and consistently getting himself in position to knock down free throws, that was another one of those low key, important dynamics for the Celtics to get this win. They needed this. They needed to get a win like this in the worst way. Because as much as we look at the Celtics as just being able to just run roughshod over anyone and everyone in their path, their ability to win games on nights when they're not playing great is just as important to their development as a team, as a championship caliber team who can do it again. This is a game that, again, you with Toronto, I think people have to remember that Toronto's greatest strength is Boston's biggest weakness. And so in theory, it makes a lot of sense that this game should have been close. But the Celtics, that's no excuse for them to allow Toronto just absolutely kick their ass on the glass the way they did. The final numbers are not a reflection of how this game was played under the boards. I think the Celtics were like -2 or something like that on the boards, and it was not that close. I mean, anyone who watched this game will come away thinking that the Celtics just absolutely got pounded on the glass, particularly when you look at Pirtle. Most of his shots were within 5-6 feet of the basket, getting incredibly deep post position, and it really didn't matter who was guarding him. He was able to kind of have anything and everything he wanted, and that's a little bit disturbing because we'll talk about it, maybe later when Noah comes on, but Cleveland is the kind of team that the way they're built, they're built to counter whatever the Celtics want to do. The Celtics love threes. If the threes aren't falling and you play in a team that has a significantly powerful inside presence the way Cleveland does, with Mobley and also with Allen, you're going to have a hard time putting that team away. So that's going to be a great game. But the Celtics between now and then, they really need to just figure out just ways to get by until Porzingis comes back and find ways to be better on the interior, because they were able to dodge a bullet in this one. I don't have a good feeling that they'll continue to be able to do that if they play like this and they have to really overcome three-point shooting struggles the way they had to tonight.
Yeah, and speaking of Brown, Mazzulla wouldn't say whether the shot was for Brown. Jackson Tolliver tells us in the press room, but said it was a routine play that got blown up, partially because they only had 20 seconds and not 20. I don't know what that has to do with it, but Celtics trying to run down that clock. Maybe have to move a little quicker there, and the play got blown up one way or another. Clearly, there was some action on the left side there. Brown coming around a Horford off-ball screen. I don't know if he would have shot a three, or maybe they would have gone going downhill there. Again, I think they want to get a jump shot off in those situations. So Mazzulla with a little bit of an explanation there. Noa Dalzell is in on that press conference right now. She'll be joining us here shortly. But big plays from Brown. He had a block on R.J. Barrett, I believe, late in the fourth quarter, right before Pirtle tried posting up Tatum and tried to draw a foul there, but they weren't giving it to him. And then you had a great driving dump off to Queta. Again, as you mentioned, Sherrod, him playing with 5 fouls, still put his head down, still attacked the basket and found Queta for the game-tying layup that forced overtime and prevented the Raptors from winning on the other side with a big block there. So he was awesome in this game. Just looks a little more comfortable each night coming back from that hip injury.
Yeah, and it's going to take him a minute to just get back to being exactly where he was, or pretty close to where he was before. But certainly, this was another step in the right direction to Jaylen, just reinvigorating this roster with his energy, his effort, his game. And they're going to need him to keep inching slowly but surely back to being, an all NBA, certainly all-star caliber player that he has shown himself to be the last couple of years. But again, there's just a part of you when you watch this game and you look back on it, you just feel that this was yet another one of those games where it shouldn't have been this close. I know Toronto did a lot of good things, and certainly the Celtics, you give them credit for, weathering the storm, but you want to see them in these type of games really put teams away sooner rather than later, just for the simple fact that they play a style that you aren't necessarily strong in, and that is they're a very physical team. They want to make it a 2-point shooting contest because they feel that's the best shot that they have to compete based on their personnel. And the Celtics were not able to make them pay for their inability to shoot threes the way we've seen them make other teams pay. Like I said, the Toronto came in here taking fewer threes than any team in the NBA, and thus making, as you can imagine, making fewer threes than anyone in the NBA. And I never got the sense that the Celtics were really making that distinction between these two teams a priority from the standpoint of making them pay for not being a three-point shooting team.
Yeah, and that was where this one got a little fluky. Raptors shot a ton of free throws, and I want to throw that in there too. Barrett missed 2 free throws down the stretch. He missed the and 1 free throw that would have put them up 3.
I think he missed 5 total or something like that.
Yeah, and the Raptors ended up. Pirtle missed a big one that would have given them the lead, I believe, late there. Just a bunch of missed free throws from the Raptors down the stretch. Yeah, that would have tied the game with 3 minutes left, Pirtles. So all kinds of crunch time free throw misses for the Raptors in this one, and they ended the game 14-21, just 66% from the free throw line there. Celtics go 17-19. So pretty fair in terms of the total number there, but that one, a big reason the Celtics were able to escape to overtime. If the Raptors took care of business at the line, they're going to win this game.
Yeah. And that for the Celtics, again, you have to feel as though you dodged a bullet with this one because, again, you did not play a great game. And Toronto, reminded us why they have the worst record in the NBA. They just don't seem to make the necessary plays to get over the hump, to give themselves a great opportunity to win. They had a good one, but the mistakes that they made, the missed free throws, the poor decision-making at times, they collectively took, away from what was an otherwise pretty strong effort on Toronto's part.
Yep, and Noa Dalzell, I just saw her walk into the media room, so she's going to join us in just a few seconds here. Continue to talk about the Queta start I found interesting there. We can talk about him for a few minutes here before Noah jumps on, but not a great first half for him. Some stellar plays down the stretch, though. A big block in overtime, I believe, was when his came, and putbacks, alley-oops. They shot so many threes in this game, Sherrod, and I think that was another part of why this ended up being so competitive, is they just weren't taking great quality threes for a lot of this game. The moments where Queta could give them some running downhill looks at the rim, offensive rebounds. He had that great one on the baseline that he got fouled on toward the stretch run of this game. So he's still trying to gain that trust defensively. He's still trying to figure out where to be on that end of the floor. But offensively, he's giving them a dynamic that they really need right now.
Yeah. It's especially his ability to finish at the rim and just really force defenses to really get into that state of uncertainty. You know, when Jaylen Brown or Tatum penetrates and you've got Queta kind of roaming along that baseline, is Tatum going to shoot? Is he going to throw the lob? It creates a level of uncertainty for defenses that I think is a major plus for the Celtics going forward. Because Queta, as we saw in this game and we've seen in plenty of games, can play well above the rim. He's that type of player, and frankly, they needed someone like that. But his defense, I think, at times just fluctuates in terms of its impact. He's a really good free throw shooter. Again, he's a good player who I think can be really good, but it's going to take a minute. It's not going to be as impactful now as I think he'll be, in a very near future. And I think, for the Celtics, you're just going to try to get all you can out of him while you can. And then just try to put him in positions where, his strengths are played to. So.
Yeah, and I'm working on a story about him right now, so I'm obviously talking to a lot of people who've been around him through his development in college and everything else like that. And what stands out is he started basketball pretty late in his life. So we're talking about a 25-year-old guy here who obviously in NBA terms is a little bit older for being 4 years into his career, but we're only talking about a guy who's 10 or so years into his basketball career period, 10, 15 years here since he started around, I think he started like 10, 11 in Portugal. So he's still developing. There's still upside here that I think, you look at a guy who's 25 and you're normally not like, oh, there's big upside here. There's a lot of room for growth. I think with him, there is. You look at his defensive positioning, just seems to be in the right spot more often than he was a year ago. He's not fouling, Sherrod. I think that's something I notice every game when he picks up that first foul or that second foul late in the game. I'm like, oh, if he played this much last year, he'd have 5-6 fouls by now and be out of this game. And then offensively, like just much more smoother getting out of his box. I think Scal said it at one point, that coming out of the screen and getting downhill fast so he can catch those lobs is an area where he's grown as well. And I think they're putting him in more actions as a, handoff, high post creator. There's just so many ways you can use him on both ends. And I love that they continue to empower him here. He didn't have a great start to this game, but there he is in crunch time to finish overtime and to finish the fourth quarter out there with some big plays. And even on a night where you can nitpick him, we've said this a million times, Sherrod, there's so many more moments that he gives you that's a plus. I know he ends a minus in this game, but I feel like his performance overall gave you more good than bad.
Yeah, I would agree. I would absolutely agree with that because, you look at some of the things that he's able to do, even in a less than full strength state. And there's no question, he helps you win games. The things that he's able to do are major bonuses for the Celtics. And certainly, it'll be important for them to continue to recognize that and build off of those moments.
So Noa Dalzell joins us here from TD Garden. The garden's quickly falling apart around me here. So Sherrod, I'll put you in the host chair for about 10, 20 minutes here, and I'll come back to close it out.
All right. Bye, Bobby. Let the adults take over. Yes, we got this, Noah. Hey, Noah, just really, there's a lot to unpack with this one. But I was curious about just what was Joe saying about that last play, with Tatum. I mean, clearly it was the play broke down. I mean, when Jaylen Brown is on the ground, you've got one shot that you're trying to take. You probably want Jaylen in some way, shape, or form involved in the play. What did Joe say about that final play, the Tatum game winner?
Yeah, what he said was that they're just trying to get the defense moving. Like, they don't want to set defense for that entire last play. So I think it wasn't necessarily that he was looking for Jaylen or if there was a specific action that he called. Maybe there was, but that's not what he told us. He said effectively, like, he just wanted to make sure that there was movement and there was multiple options, and they got a shot out of it. It obviously wasn't, I don't think it was necessarily what they drew up, but yeah, that was the main thing he said, that it's just really hard at the end of a game is because you're not going to have two guys on the ball. Like, it's just really hard to get any sort of advantage. And so I think just that action, that motion is what he was going for.
In that particular moment, no, we've seen Jayson in that moment a lot, and typically the result is not what we saw tonight. But the shot he took kind of is that dribble out the shot clock, raise up for a three. I hate when he does that, personally. It just feels that, there's a reason why, coaches call plays. And even though this one broke down, and I think that was a reason why, we didn't see a play executed, it's even when that's the case, Jayson still winds up taking these kind of shots anyway. What's your sense of that particular shot? Like the basically the dribble down the shot clock, raise up for the three, and maybe a win shot.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's not a Tatum thing and it's not a Celtics thing. It's really an NBA thing where this is how last, possessions are played out. And once in a while, you see them not even get a good look. And like the other day when Tatum didn't catch the Holiday pass, and like that's frustrating when you don't get a good look. So I think the reality is you just want to see a shot at the end of a game, and you want it to be a decent look. And it's very rarely like a layup or something, a wide open three. Like that's just league wide. And I think sometimes fans are so used to watching their team, and so you get frustrated with your star player missing that shot. But if you go around the league and watch Luka end of games, this is the shot that teams are getting. And so some years I think certain guys have a better time with that look. Like I think Tatum earlier in his career was a little bit more efficient from it. I know last season was a tough season for him as far as that goes. But at the end of the day, like it is just kind of how coaches approach that moment, because I think they're so worried about turning the ball over. They're so worried about, getting a shot up too soon into the possession, that their mindset when it's tied, which is both times at end of regulation, end of overtime, both times it was tied, like that's the way that it goes. And so I think he was due for one. And so it was ironic that he missed the more open one and then hit the more contested one, but he was due for one. And I think he's been underrated clutch this season. Like people, I'm so glad that he hit this later one, because that shot at the end of regulation would have become the big story and just way overplayed. But he's hit some big shots. He hit, in Detroit down the stretch, he was clutch. I'm trying to remember now off the top of my head, but just the close games, he has actually been engaged and he's been hitting them. So I think that people are just, last season he really wasn't. He wasn't hitting those game winners, and so it became a big story. But it's not really. I don't think it really needs to be a big story.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely people have a little bit of PTSD when you see Jayson taking that shot. You think, oh my God, last year that was a problem. This year not so much, and also the way he starts games. I didn't look at the numbers beforehand, but I know Tatum for most of the season has been like the league's top first quarter scorer. And tonight he was 13 points in the first quarter. When you just look at just his game at this point, are you happy with it? Are you content with it? Is it meh? How would you characterize just what you're seeing out of Jayson Tatum at this point? The totality of his game right now.
Of tonight or just the season so far?
The season so far.
No, I mean I think he's having a really good season. Like the shooting, he's had a couple of really hot shooting performances and a couple cold ones, and overall he's been about average to what we've come to expect. But in other ways, I think he's really improved. The passing to me is the big story from these last few games. Like I think he had 9 or 10 assists the other night, and then 9 tonight. And honestly, like he could have had a lot more. I feel like he's a couple of these opportunities have just not translated, like some open looks that guys are getting. But you can just see his approach is right. And so yeah, like he's been really benefiting early on with the full first quarters that he didn't get last year. It's almost like him and Jalen have kind of flipped in that sense, where Jalen used to really benefit from the first quarters and now it's Tatum. But ultimately, I think that he's having a very well-rounded season. And people want him to be an elite three-point shooter. I think the reality is that if he becomes like a 40+% shooter from three, like he's the best player in the league. And just because he's not that doesn't mean that he's not like having a great season or is invaluable for this Celtics team. And so sometimes we fixate on like what we want him to be, but there's very few guys that can do everything that he can do and shoot at that percentage. There's no guys. So that's kind of where the frustration, I think, comes from people. But yeah, the shooting, the passing is really what stood out to me these last few games.
Yeah, and when you talk about shooting, even though we don't really talk a ton about him when you talk about three-point shooting with this team, Al Horford had one of those low-key, really good games. Kind of really helped them when there were some offensive droughts. I think he finished with like 17 points. Had another really good night in terms of shooting the ball from three-point range. Al was 5 for 10. And is shooting about 40. Actually, I think he's on the north side of 40%. I think he came in shooting like 44% from three-point range or something like that this year. What do you think has been more important for the Celtics team, his three-point shooting or what he brings defensively?
Honestly, like he's been their best three-point shooter this season.
Which is kind of crazy that your 6'9" forward center is and he's not like, this isn't like Lauri Markkanen or just, guys who are bigs, but they're not really bigs. They're just tall wings. Al is a legitimate big man. But continue. Sorry about that.
No, I'm just saying, I think like Al's three-point shooting has become something you can really come to rely on. Like this is 3 or 4 seasons in a row now where he's just an elite shooter. And so I always think about the quote back a couple years ago when he said in the media scrum, like, I'm an elite shooter, and he got the garner the laugh, and it became a big story. But the reality is that the fact that he spaces the floor the way that he does, and it's not a fluke. This is year after year now. This is just the way that he is. And I think he just has so much chemistry with the other players on the team. Like Tatum just seems to know where he is at all times. Like there's certain duos that he has on the floor where it's not just that he can shoot effectively, but it's also the fact that he's able to figure out, find his spots, take good shots. He pretty much only takes good shots, which is part of why he's at that percentage. I think that probably if everybody was as selective as he was for shooting percentages go, maybe he wouldn't be the best, but he's just taking wide open looks, and teams try to give him, they have to give something up. And so a lot of times it's that. And so far he's made them pay this year. And I think that's been huge. And yeah, he hit some big ones tonight. I think he had, was it one in overtime, one in late fourth quarter? I'm trying to remember. No, I guess it was late fourth quarter. So yeah, it's kind of wild when you think about just the fact that he literally wasn't a 3-point shooter for so much of his career. And now this is who he is.
Yeah, it's such a big part of his game. I never would have, because I've known Al since he was in high school. When he was at Grand Ledge High School in Michigan, and I was covering the Detroit Pistons, he was like a really big deal on the high school basketball scene before he went to Florida. And I went to see him play a few times, and I've told Al this. There's no way in hell that I would have ever imagined him being any type of 3-point shooter, let alone an elite one. And I had a chance to talk to him actually, earlier this season about his 3-point shooting. And it's amazing how he has just went about working to become a better 3-point shooter. And we're actually going to see the architect of Al's 3-point shooting when Cleveland comes to town, because Kenny Atkinson was an assistant with the Atlanta Hawks when Al was there. And Kenny was the one that convinced Al that he needed to expand his game. And the way Kenny has told the story, Al wasn't exactly ready to do cartwheels and backflips about being a 3-point shooter because, Al, he's a smart guy. And he knew that, his career up to that point had been about making teams pay with his athleticism, his ability to finish around the rim, the little elbow jump shot, all those things. And now you're telling him that he needs to take his game out a little further. And the more they talked about it, the more Al realized in order to extend his career, he was going to have to become a more competent 3-point shooter. But I don't even think Al would have anticipated at this point in his career, he would be this impactful as a 3-point shooter. It really is just fascinating how he's been able to just kind of, really take this one slice of his game and just make it into this really important part of what he does and who he is.
Yeah, and I think it's part of why he's enjoyed such longevity in his career. The fact that he's still able to be out there, like it's really hard to have guys out especially in the playoffs. Like there are so few liabilities on the floor on either end, and not being able to shoot now is a liability from 3. And so Al extended his career. I also do think that sometimes when he goes like 0 for 5, 0 for 6, people have the most like short-term memory about him, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's washed. Like last year during the playoffs, I remember he had a little bit of a cold stretch early on, and everybody was like, this is it for Al. And then every year he comes back out and he puts together these kinds of shooting performances. And how many times have we seen Al hit 5 threes in a massive game, 6 threes, a late fourth quarter 3? Like it's just automatic. And then defensively, it's hard to. In Celtics interior defense left a lot to be desired today, so it's hard to praise any one guy, because sometimes on the first watch it's not quite clear exactly what is going wrong. I wouldn't say Al was the main culprit, but he has just been so steady for them over these last few seasons that I just feel like he has become such a core part of their identity on both ends that you wonder, like, is he going to be around? This is the last year of his contract. Like that's the big thing I'm thinking about going into this season is like, how much more of this guy are we going to get? Because he hasn't really slowed down. He really hasn't. Like I think people just expect him to, and the age thing is just objective, so everybody talks about it. But he's been giving you the same thing for the last few years here.
Yeah, he really has. And it's not like Al is in what I call the Udonis Haslem mode, where he's around, he's on contract, but he's not really playing. He's more of just kind of like, that wise veteran who's just basically, a voice, an extra coach, basically, on your team. You're right. He's a guy that's still contributing. But part of his role is to help develop some of those young bigs, guys like Queta, who look up to him. Same thing with X-Men. I talked to him recently about Al as well. And when I look at what those guys are doing and what they're capable of doing, there's no doubt there's room to grow. And with Queta specifically, when I think about the three bigs, we're talking about Luke, X, and Queta, from where they were a year ago to where they are now, seems to be the one that has made the most exponential growth. What are you seeing out of Queta when you see him on the floor now?
Yeah, I think you see like a certain natural ability that is undeniable, like certain plays that he makes, certain athleticism. I know he sometimes brings the ball down and that frustrates people, but he has a natural like feel around the rim, like he catches tough passes for a guy his size. And I can say, like, standing next to Queta, he feels like the tallest person I've ever seen. Like obviously there's a lot of tall players in the NBA, but there's something about just his size, just everything. He's just you think that he's not going to be as nimble as he is, and he really is pretty nimble. And so I think there's the potential and the ceiling is there, and every time you watch him play, it's there. He's been less effective these last few games than he was the previous few, and that's just going to be the cadence of his career, in my opinion. Like I don't think that it wasn't going to go like this, with no hiccups. He's playing some really good post players. There was Giannis last weekend. There's Jakob Poeltl, who I think is super underrated because he just hasn't played on a very relevant team these last few years. And so the guys that he has been struggling with are guys that everybody struggles with. But I think that when you watch a guy that was just in the G League a year ago, we were not sure if he's supposed to be in the rotation, like it's easier to over criticize those players, because it's like, what is this guy doing out here? Like, you shouldn't even be playing. Meanwhile, it's like, that's just the kind of shots that you're gonna give up. You're gonna have to deal with, like, at the end of the day, the NBA team score 120 points in a game, right? So I don't know. I'm still really optimistic about him, and I think that the fact that he's getting these more extended minutes is just how he's going to learn to battle these guys. Like it's almost like he's a rookie in a way, because this is his first time really getting these kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, he even though obviously the player I'm about to mention is very different than him, different size, different game, all that. But I do see similarities to where Peyton Pritchard was, before he kind of broke out a little bit last year, and where Queta is now, as a guy who's getting that first taste of actually getting on the floor when it's actually means something, and it's kind of the ups and downs that come with that. I mean, I thought this was a great example of both the promise, the potential, and the problems that Queta has when you put him out there. I thought defensively, he just didn't. I didn't think he competed as consistently as he should have with Poeltl. He had his moments, there's no doubt about that, and he definitely did some positive things for the Celtics. But he has to become more consistent. And when you talk to veteran players, they say that consistency is what ultimately separates players who are going to play and play pretty steady minutes, and guys who maybe every now and then are just going to be kind of randoms out there who give you a good game on Monday, and 3 weeks later will be the next time they will make an impact. Queta has tremendous upside, and you want to avoid all the comparisons, but it's hard not to look at him and not think about Time Lord. Incredibly athletic, long guy, can play above the rim. And I don't want to think about Time Lord because every time I think about Time Lord, I think about potential that was never met. That it was always about the potential and never about the body of work and the proven body of work consistently. In Queta, I just hope that the narrative behind Queta has a different ending than it did for Rob.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious advantage here, I don't think Queta has the injury-prone stuff because it's really remarkable for someone his size to not to jinx him, but like he's been pretty available and healthy throughout his career. And we always say like the best indicator of future injury is past injury, and so that's something that he has going for him. But I worry about the Time Lord stuff just because I feel like there's some things that Rob Williams can do that he just can't, at least at this point. And there's I think we forget sometimes, like Rob Williams was really one of the best defenders in the league for a stretch there, or if not the best defender in the league. And just the help side defense, the rim protection, like I don't know, I get why fans and why we're making it, because there's just been very few guys that have even reminded us of Rob at all. And so Queta has like glimpses of it, but he doesn't need to be Rob Williams to be a really impactful player for this team. That's the other piece of it. He can give you parts of that without being Rob Williams ultimately. But we have the clip loaded up of Joe talking about the last play that we were referring to earlier, so we can, Jackson, if you want to cue that, we can hear exactly in his words what his plan was there.
You had drawn something up maybe for Jaylen. What was the play there?
It was just one of our normal plays. We were just in a unique spot where there was 20 seconds left and you want to get a shot. And I just didn't want to dribble around and keep the defense static. So advancing it wasted some time, and then just running one of the actions that kind of gets some movement and has multiple options to it. So I thought it was executed well by the guys, and it was a great shot by Jayson. I mean, it really usually they're in isolation because most teams are switching because you don't want to put two on the ball with 10 seconds left in the game. So I think it's just a matter of how do you move the defense to try and get drives and try to force them into 2-on-1s with overhelps and situations like that. So I like the play that we ran with an off-ball component to it, and there were multiple layers to it, but the guys delivered. That number's a little skewed because it's Jakob Poeltl, so you have to go 76 minus 35 because he shoots floaters from inside the dots, and that's a shot that you're willing to give up over time. So those are all technically in the paint, and so some of those you have to give up. So do we have to get better at it? Yeah, 76. I know it's a number that generates a lot of headlines, and you'll be able to use that later tonight in your articles. But I would say there's probably about, half of those are because of the coverage that you're going to play on a guy like him throughout a game. The other half is we have to do a better job rebounding, and we have to do a better job at individual defense. So those are the two areas that can clean up 50% of those points, you know what I mean? Defense and rebounding. He's a bear down there, though. He's good. I mean, he's good. It's one of those situations. If you play one coverage, he's going to shoot that. If you play a different one, he's going to bury you on the glass. So he puts teams in a bind. He's a good player.
Head coach / editor Joe Mazzulla. Put that in your stories. Corrales. No, Joe, I get what he's saying, and it does make sense. But to me, the part that he just kind of slipped in there was that this is a problem. That this is something that they have to get better at. And yes, 76 might be a bit inflated because of Poeltl's game. It doesn't change the fact that this is a problem. This is a clear and undeniable weakness with your team. And I'm still not getting a sense of how you're going to address that. Can you address that with the way your team is constructed now?
Yeah, I think two things that I've gathered from Joe from covering him these past 2 years is, one is he really likes to contextualize kind of basic stats with more advanced analytics, or like giving us just more context and color. And surely some of it is like, things that make the Celtics look better, that make him look better. But I also think that there's something to be said of like, we do use oftentimes like pretty simple statistics, and like points in the paint is one of those statistics that I think is really easy to throw around and be like, okay, lots of points in the paint means like you were soft on defense. You had bad post players. Like that's like it kind of becomes that conversation sometimes. And so that comment that he made there about the floater is like, I think he's right that it was frustrating to watch it on replay over and over and over again. But he hit literally every single one. He was 16 of 19 from the field. And ultimately he had 35 points, which is a lot, but 35 points is not like an insane amount of points for the NBA today, like with Tatum's averaging 30. And so I think there's a certain amount of like, you have to give something up, and that's what they're going to give up in this game. And they gave up 23 3-pointers attempted. So the Raptors really didn't do anything from the outside. And so, yeah, I think he's not always going to go 16 of 19. He's probably going to more often hit about 50%. But while there's surely things that he's going to correct and they're going to go over on film, and I wasn't super impressed by anybody's defensive performance of the post players tonight. Like, I thought Luke struggled at points. I thought Queta struggled at points. But I also hear what he's saying of like, these aren't actually the types of like difficult shots that this is a more difficult shot than maybe we're thinking of as we're watching it, because it started looking like a layup line, but he's basically saying like it's really not just a layup line. And I don't know. Usually when I rewatch the game, I'm determined how I feel about those kinds of things. But on the first watch, I will say like it did look like he was getting really easy looks. But I get the disclaimer there. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sherrod?
Well, I mean, I get the disclaimer too, but part of it is just their inability to get this guy from getting to his sweet spots. I mean, I guess the thing that just resonated with me, he's right. Pirtle loves to shoot those little floaters. Here's a thought. How about getting him in a position where he's not in position to shoot those little floaters? I mean, that's a controllable thing in theory. That's really what your defense is supposed to do. And that's the thing for me. It wasn't so much the defense breaking down. It was the defense not really adapting to what you knew Pirtle wanted to do. He wants to take those shots. He wants to get in position where the minute he catches the ball, he just got to toss it up their little floater. That's his game. And there's a reason why this was a career game for him, because he did it at a level that he doesn't normally do. Most teams don't allow him to get this comfortable. I mean, I think he came into the game averaging like 15, 16 points a game, something like that. And he had 35, and I believe it was a career high or damn near close to one if it wasn't. That's coach. I understand it. 76 may not be, indicative of how they dominate the paint, but you still have a problem. And it's a problem that I don't know if you have figured out how to address it. Forget about fixing it. How are you going to address it and at least give yourself a chance to combat that? And to your point, no, I think you're right. I mean, I didn't think Al played great defense. I didn't think Luke played great defense. I didn't think any of their bigs played great defense. And we're not expecting that. But can we have good defense? Can we have defense? If we could get some of that, Pirtle, instead of 35, maybe he only has 26 or 27. And instead of it going to overtime, you win it by 5 in regulation. It just seems that defensively, they are not quite where they need to be. And it's not so much a personnel issue. It just seems that there's some other issues or dynamics that are leading to this team not being as consistent defensively as they've been in the past. Forget the past. Last year, let's just forget about the past and just limit it to last season. It's kind of what you expect from a defensive consistency standpoint. When you bring the whole band back together, you think that will be the one thing that you can kind of bank on and being solid defensively.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some people in the chat. I do think Drew's absence was felt tonight. I think they would have involved him a little bit in the action at points. But one of the things that Joe said post-game was, we've been competing. We're just not executing. And I think sometimes those things are hard to discern from watching, especially watching when you're watching a guy get burned and there's a handoff and there's an open layup and Luke's back is turned and it's like, are they competing? But I think Joe's synopsis of this game and of the last few days here, he said, the effort is there. We're not executing coverages. And so part of that is like, you do have a guy on the floor that didn't play last year in Queta. And so that changes everybody's role. Another part of it is I do think Drew, and Drew is just missed tonight, but like, I think Drew does clean up a lot of mistakes that maybe go unnoticed. And so that is, an element of it as well. But I will say, I didn't feel at all during the playoffs last year that they were missing Porzingis. Like every time we talked about it, I said, I maintained this stretch of like the stance of like, they don't need him. He's a plus. It'd be great if they had him back. But ultimately, I think they can win the championship and beat any of these teams without him. And it mostly came true because he didn't really play much. I don't really feel that way anymore. I feel like they need him and they need him back, and his absence is felt. And so maybe it's like at a certain point, this team wasn't constructed to like not have him. Like there's a reason why he's on the roster. But during these last few weeks, I've been thinking like, okay, I do have this feeling that I didn't have during the playoffs last year. And so maybe at a certain point they were going to run out of like fumes of being able to play Al Horford 40 minutes a night and everybody covering up for one another. And it's like, they need one of their best players back. And so there's an element of that too. And I think the other stuff's going to get better. Like the Queta stuff's going to get better. But yeah, I will say there was a moment, like just looking at the final score, they scored 123 points in overtime. So as frustrating as it is, like I watched them play and I thought to myself, it feels like they have way more points than they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our good friend Bobby Manning is about to rejoin the team. Bobby, there you go. Welcome back.
Hello.
Welcome back.
I'm going to hop, right?
Yep. Yeah, Tatum will be talking
Okay.
soon over on the
Trading me for Bobby. Good to catch up, Sherrod.
You too, Noah. Tagging out. Okay. Bye. Hey, Bobby, we're just actually talking about Queta. Can you hear, Bobby? Can you hear? Oh, there we go. We're just talking about Queta and just kind of
you got me.
Yeah, I got you. Just your thoughts on Queta's game tonight? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Again, I thought first half he had some moments where you get lost a little bit defensive. I'm gonna have to go back and watch a lot of it because I don't know how much of it was his fault, but it did seem, again, he's in there at center. He's, I think we're mixing matchups and stuff, so not all of it's his fault there, but he starts that game. They're getting a lot of dribble penetration in there. And again, I think they're using him in help position a lot of the time more than just being that like, pick and roll defender or drop back guy. So I think a lot of times teams are going to try to put him in actions, and they're doing that so teams can't put him in actions. But when he's out there, teams are going to go at him, Sherrod. I mean, he's, not the weak link necessarily, but if you're going to go at anybody in that defense, that's the guy that they're going to try to challenge there. So that's going to be an ongoing process for him to continue to try to, figure out there. And then second half, you put backs, that putback on the Tatum miss when he was posting up and just kind of tossed it up there and Queta threw it down with one hand. I mean, I feel like we're seeing one special thing like that a night from him at this point. So that was awesome. Couple other plays. I get the block in overtime was huge. There were just a baseline offensive rebound where he got fouled. He can just count the plays. And again, I said it in our opening segment, Sherrod, you're getting more positive plays than negative plays from him. So given the ceiling here, given the upside, I've said it multiple times early this season, I'm willing to live with a little more Queta and a little less Luke to be able to develop Queta and that upside. Absolutely.
That is sacrilegious, Bobby, what you just said. Wow.
And, Luke has moments in this game, too. The run-ahead layup and a couple offensive rebounds.
Offensive rebounds that were key. Yeah, some good. You did some things.
I think they're actually tied. At one point, I was tallying up the offensive rebounds for the season. Queta might have actually finished with more because he had 4 in this game. But at one point tonight, they were tied for the season for offensive rebounds, total offensive rebounds, most on the Celtics this year. So that's the one thing you're getting from both of those guys. And they need it. Again, tonight was a night, Sherrod, where the 3 really wasn't falling for this team early. Right. And so you need Queta on the offensive glass to be able to grab those. You need Cornette on the offensive glass to be able to get those. And I think Joe has said this at times, and I feel that way too. They're not quite killing it on the offensive glass to the degree that they should be, where it's so important and such a big part of their offensive game.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to work the double big lineup. I mean, that should be, at worst, you're breaking even in terms of working on the boards when you got, the 2 bigs in there. But that's not really happening. It's been quite the adventure for them when it comes to rebounding the ball. Has not been great. And the thing Noah and I were talking a little bit about this was just that, when you bring the band back together like this, there's certain things that you expect that will be transferable. And one of those things I would think is just your defense overall. But it really does look like it's still early. I get that. but it really does look like defensively there's a gear that they haven't been able to quite shift into that we're accustomed to seeing. Is it as simple as just Queta adjusting to being with that group, or is there something else that's kind of really holding this group back from being that great defensive team that we know they have the potential and the pieces to be?
Well, you throw out Porzingis' name earlier, Sherrod, and that was one thing we talked about coming into the year is how would you play without him? Because he missed some games here or there during the year last year, but he didn't miss extended stretches until the playoffs where you're playing Horford 35, 40 minutes at that point. So it's not quite the same here. And in this game, Sherrod, you saw it. They were really trying to limit Horford again. And, he's had so many great moments this year in spots, but the emphasis on trying to minimize how much they lean on Horford, how many minutes he plays, how much of a load they put on him, especially early this regular season after the long run, is pretty concerted. I mean, how often do you see a second unit in overtime, in a 5-minute overtime like we did tonight? So they're mixing and matching centers and center combinations constantly here. Queta, I mean, he only had a few spot appearances last year when multiple guys were out. So it's a new dynamic playing with Horford and him to start games. And certainly when Queta's out there alone, that's a whole new dynamic. So it's just different team this year. I think we're seeing that the defense has taken a slight step back. And, I don't know. I don't know how much you and Noah got into it, Sherrod, but how much do you feel like tonight was execution, different lineup, that sort of thing, or Toronto just catching them off guard and outplaying them, out-hustling them?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that from the standpoint of, Joe saying, basically that, this team, the effort has been great, but the execution has been lacking at times. And I thought tonight was one of those type of games. I thought that their execution at both ends of the floor wasn't quite where it needed to be. I thought they had, I felt this was one of those games like Derek White, for example. I thought he took more bad threes than normal. It looks like one guy who I thought did a lot of good things, and we talked about him earlier, Jaylen Brown. I think he's ready to speak. Do you see that, Bobby?
Yeah, we got Jaylen Brown here. I asked him about the last play. I popped into the locker room for a sec to see what was supposed to happen on that play. So here's Jaylen talking about that. Trying to set up initially.
We just wanted to get the last shot. We got some good action at a scrum. So that play was similar to the play that we ran where I dumped it off to Nimi, which tied the game. It was the same play as that.
Wow.
So, yeah, I didn't get too deep into it, but it did feel like it was for Jaylen there.
Yeah. Well, but I like the idea that Joe is running action that at least gives the appearance and forces teams to think about it being for Jaylen. I mean, think back to, when you think about Brad Stevens, when he was coaching the team, one of the great things that Brad did consistently was create misdirection plays where you're thinking one thing is going to happen and Brad is looking to do something else, creating options so that, his players can figure out what's the best basketball play in that moment and not necessarily have them kind of, tied to a very specific player getting it in a specific spot for looking to create a very specific moment. And it seems like Joe is doing some of that as well. But the execution really, I thought for the most part, just wasn't great in this game. And Toronto, when you're as bad as they've been this year, a broken clock is right twice a day. They're going to have a game where they're going to beat someone when they're clearly not the better team. But I thought Toronto, they did enough things to give themselves a chance to win, and the Celtics did enough things to keep Toronto from just not getting blown out. And the end result is you get a game that's tighter than I think the records would indicate it should be.
Yeah, a little more from Jaylen here because he did have some interesting comments. I think he talked a little bit about his injury here and how he's feeling coming back from it and the physicality and the just effort that Toronto threw at them, taking their opponent's best shots and all that sort of thing. So some good stuff from Jaylen here in the locker room after the game.
But any pain that I have, it's manageable. Before it was kind of like limiting me, but now I feel a lot better.
Were you surprised you didn't get a foul call in that last play? What was your?
I guess all game, like the level of physicality, which I'm cool with to a certain extent, but like if you're gonna allow them to just put two hands and try to try to stop me, allow me to use my physical gifts as well. I feel like all night they were just doing that, just trying to knock you off balance, using two hands. And I shot a decent amount of free throws tonight, so I'm not really upset about it. But that last play, I thought was a foul for sure. But I'm just glad we got the win.
And you know what, Bobby? The physicality that Jaylen alluded to in this game, it's been like that most of the season. You look at the teams that the Celtics have had problems with, the one common thread in all of those teams was that they played a super physical game. You go back and look at this game, and you look at something as simple as Peyton Pritchard bringing the ball up and how physical they were. Jayson Tatum moving without the ball and how he was getting popped consistently when he had the ball and when he didn't have the ball. This is what teams in the NBA, as they go about looking at the Celtics, believe is their greatest weakness, that you can beat them if you beat them, if you literally and physically beat them up. And it's something the Celtics aren't used to. They're not used to the level of physicality that I think they're seeing with a certain amount of consistency. The good thing is that it's happening early in the season, and they're getting a chance to frankly adjust and adapt to that style of play and still find ways to win. That's the one positive thing. And as we talked about earlier with Jaylen, the fact that he was able to play as effectively as he did in this game with foul trouble down the stretch, it says a lot about his own, I think, growth in terms of figuring out how to make the most of a not so great situation in terms of foul trouble and in terms of scoreboard, being at home against a team that in theory you should be beating easily, but because of the way they played and the way they're playing you, it's now a much closer game than anyone anticipated it being. So I actually like the fact that teams are being so physical with the Celtics, because I do think it's going to make them better over the long haul.
Yeah, and this is definitely a game you don't win without Jaylen's impact. And that block late, I mentioned it earlier, huge play, tied game, 36 seconds. Barrett's been going to the rim and scoring all game, and he puts his hand in there and gets a big block. And a lot of guys with 5 fouls in that spot, Sherrod, are just going to get out of the way. But I guess, going for the win and in that spot, you got to be able to get in there and make a play and make it clean, and he did. That was one of the biggest plays in this game, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, it's big not only in terms of obviously its impact on the final outcome, but also, as you alluded to, Bobby, the fact that it came at a moment where most players would have shied away from trying to make that play because they want to be on the floor. And literally, if the whistle's blowing, you're done. That's it. It's a wrap for you. So.
Yep. So Tatum will be talking shortly. Noah's over there waiting on him. He had a big game tonight, of course, with the game winner, 7-19. 11 rebounds, 9 assists, falls just short of the triple-double. And I want to get into his game a little bit and look ahead to Cleveland on Tuesday, which is the game everyone's thinking about. Maybe the Celtics were even thinking a little bit about tonight, overlooking this Toronto team. But Cleveland's going to play tomorrow. They have a 14-0 record as it stands. I think they have the Hornets on a back-to-back for Charlotte. So good position, injured Hornets team. A team that hasn't been great to start this year at all. So I think it's more than likely the Cavs are going to come in here at 15-0 on Tuesday, a couple of days off for the Celtics, badly needed days off through the weekend here, through Sunday and Monday. And I want to give a shout out to HelloFresh before we wrap this show. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit, coming to your door as you want it, customizable when you want it. There's just so much customizability with HelloFresh, whether it's what you want, dozens and dozens of recipes over there, great options across the board, regardless of whether you want quick and easy, which, HelloFresh with their prepackaged ingredients, the laid out instructions, all the things you need to make cooking accessible and easy for you. And avoid the grocery stores and certainly the restaurants, Sherrod, with the prices they're charging right now. It's just out of this world what you pay to go out to eat. So getting it to your door, getting it direct in what you need and what you want when you want is so huge, especially, we're on these travel schedules right now and you can't always make it to the grocery store. Just go online, customize your order, say when you want it, and they're going to bring it to your door fresh each week. It's HelloFresh, and again, I've just loved this love this whole experience, Sherrod, since we started working with them. It's one of my favorite sponsors we've had here on CLNS Media. And, whether it's their fish package or, meat, you got great like meat lovers packages over there. And even for vegetarians and, whatever your preferences are, they have options over there. And I know you've loved it too, Sherrod.
Absolutely. And I mean, the big thing for me at the end of the day, does it taste good? And it does. I mean, and that's really important when you're trying to put together these type of meals and you're trying to save some time in the process. Is this something that's healthy for me? Is this something that's tasty? And does this take a ton of time? And HelloFresh does a great job of just checking off all those boxes for its customers. So HelloFresh is awesome.
Yep. And if you go over there right now, HelloFresh.com/freegarden, they're going to give you free breakfast for life. As long as you use HelloFresh, that's one free breakfast item per box while your subscription's active. That's free breakfast for life over at HelloFresh. And I'll be ordering my package for next week very soon here. So go check it out. Again, I love it. I've even used it personally, ordered my own boxes. It's just a great service over there. So check it out. HelloFresh.com/freegarden, America's #1 meal kit. Here's Al Horford talking about Tatum's game winner and the game tonight.
Taking that shot, that's a shot that that I constantly see him working on, and it's something that he's confident in, and we're confident in him, and for him to knock it down tonight was big for our group. Going into a second overtime there, that wouldn't have been it, but for me the most impressed I was with that is just him continuing to put in that work, and I've seen, especially this year, I've seen him work on those same types of moves and shooting that shot quite a bit in practice. So it paid off big for us tonight. I mean, has a really good floater. He's always had that. The way that I'm sure when we play him next, we'll do some different things there. But yeah, just give him a lot of credit. Hit a lot of tough shots. Those were the shots that we were willing to live with, and he really hurt us with them. He was really good tonight. The game continues to change. I feel like year by year, and even from last year, I think it's different. I think, I don't know if the stats support it or anything, but I feel like people are shooting more threes now. People are playing more of a style like we play, and it's more and more teams. So I think that's an adjustment. I think it is, and for us, it's figuring out how to win with this new style of play, how people are playing now. And we're having success, and we're probably not winning like we're expected to, but the biggest thing is that we're finding ways to get it done, and we know that we still have a lot of room to grow as a group. So that, to me, it's encouraging.
Yeah, good stuff from Al there. I love double overtime wouldn't have been it. I don't even know if we would have seen Al in double overtime.
Oh, gosh.
Maybe at the very end of it.
Bobby. Don't even think about it.
Celtics avoid that. Fortunately, a ton of off days ahead here. I think they only played 3 over 10 games after playing nonstop to start this season. They won't be back at till Tuesday against the Cavs. The last word I got on this game, Sherrod, and he mentioned at the end there, the Hawks game, I feel like that was a bigger terrible performance, let down, overlooking their opponent kind of night than this was. I thought the Raptors played well tonight. Pirtle's a good NBA player, good NBA star at center. RJ Barrett's a top pick, one of the better young players in the league. I mean, these weren't bums hurting you in this game. And Agbaji made a couple big shots here or there. And, Grady Dick didn't have a great game. There were some guys off their bench that didn't hurt you too much. So these were Toronto's good players, just making physical, tough plays against you, and you pull out a win. But it's not going to be easy against these groups. And their starting lineup, Sherrod, that they played tonight had a positive net rating this season. So they've been competitive with that group. And I, said it to one of the other reporters here in the locker room at halftime. I was like, every team pretty much in the league's been pretty competitive this year. And I think the Celtics, Horford's mentioned it, Joe's mentioned it. They're noticing a greater level of physicality that teams are starting to take advantage of. They see that they can play the Celtics more physical and get away with it. And it wasn't the Raptors tonight, obviously, right? They didn't shoot any threes here, but some teams are trying to play that three-point game with them a little more now. Pacers a good example of that. I thought the Bucks did a good job with that in their couple games that they played against them. So I think what he said there was true. There might have been some games early this season where the Celtics fell asleep or just weren't super motivated against lesser opponents. But I think the bigger story from some of these games against the Torontos of the world is that it's a different style. It's a different league to start this year, and it's been really competitive across the board. This was a fun game to watch, I felt like, Sherrod. This wasn't one where you're like, oh, man, the Celtics are playing awful and they're just not trying tonight. This was a competitive game from both teams.
Yeah, and really, this was a game where the little things really became a big deal. And when I talk about little things, I'm talking about things like free throws. The fact that RJ missed 5. If he makes 2 or 3 of those free throws that he missed, we're having a very different conversation right about now. And those are the things that really separate teams that are trying to figure out how to just win from those who absolutely know what it takes to win. Even on nights when their overall play isn't necessarily good or even average. The Celtics, I think, I agree with Joe Mazzulla from the standpoint that the effort, I think, was good. But if the execution is off, part of your responsibility as a coach is to figure out why that is and address that. Figure out why are we not executing as well as we should. And, yeah, you can easily say that it's the opponent and what they're doing. But some of the, like, for example, Tatum missing that open 3, late in regulation. That has nothing to do with, anything Toronto did to limit him missing. That's on him. That's a lack of execution. They have to gradually get back to where they were a year ago when they were executing at a really high level. The good news is they don't have to get there today. They've got plenty of time to get there, but there needs to be signs that they're moving in the right direction as far as execution is concerned, because it's a big if you're not good at that, you're not going to win a championship. It's that simple. Teams that are mediocre to below average when it comes to execution are not going to win. They'll win a lot of games, but they're not going to win in the playoffs, not to the level that their talent should allow them to. And the Celtics, they have to get better at that. They just have to.
Yeah, I don't know if Tatum started talking yet over there, but we'll get into Cavs Celtics before we get out of here. Tuesday night, biggest game in the NBA early this season, and it's an NBA Cup game. So if the Celtics lose this game, they're effectively out of this NBA Cup. So a chance to knock off the undefeated Cavs, who have been incredible, the best story in the league to start this year. And Celtics have played like one of the best teams in the league, but have dropped a couple games here or there. Mobley missed their last game with an illness, so I think he'll be good to go for this one. But remember, Sherrod, these teams played in the second round. It was super competitive through the first 2 games, and then Mitchell got hurt. Allen missed the entire series, and Mobley didn't get going until later in it. So I think they're missing Max Strus, as they have been for most of this year, but they're pretty fully loaded. Celtics will be almost fully loaded aside from Porzingis for this game. So a real measuring stick game for both teams to start this year. What do you expect them?
Oh, I expect it to be a very, very good game. I expect the Celtics to execute better. I think this is one of those games where, because of the caliber opponent, I think there's going to be a different level of focus on the Celtics part. I think they're going to be much more locked into the details, because they know that anything less than a really good execution game, not just effort, but execution game, they're not going to win. And they have been, they've shown obviously the greatness that you expect from a championship team. And this, to me, is just another chapter in running it back and winning another title, being able to snap the winning streak of the Cavaliers.
Yeah, and the biggest thing to watch for, it is the 4th most efficient team in scoring in the paint in the rim areas, and Celtics have obviously struggled with that. They struggled with it again tonight. I don't have the numbers right in front of me this second, but with a quick toggle here, Celtics gave up, let's see, at the rim tonight, 23 of 32 shooting at the rim of the Raptors in this one, Sherrod, 72%. That's where the Cavs are going to try to hurt you.
Yeah. Yep. And you're just, I mean, it's going to be a tough game for the Celtics. There's no doubt about it. And I fully expect it to be one of those, a game that's going to come down to the last 10, 15 seconds to decide the winner. Whether someone steps up, makes a big shot, or someone gets a big block, steal, deflection, something. It's going to be a game that will not be decided earlier. There's no, I just don't see a path that leads this game to being anything other than a nail biter.
Yeah, and all of it will come down to how does Tatum play against Mitchell, who's been incredible against the Celtics too in his career. I think he almost has 30 points a game against the Celtics throughout his career, one of the highest all-time totals against Boston for a player. And Garland's looking much better. They're getting a lot more corner threes. It's an interesting team, and I actually wrote about it over at Boston Sports Journal to start the year today. To start the year, Kenny Atkinson's been making some big changes there for their offense. They're the number one offense in the league, Sherrod, which I don't think people would expect, over Boston by just a couple points. And they're the best shooting team in the league by 4 points over New York to start this year. Mitchell, Garland, other guys are just giving them great productivity there. So it's going to be an incredible game. Tatum's talking over on the Celtics side right now. So Noah and I are going to do a report here on what he had to say and his night and the game winner and all of that. But we're going to wrap it up over here live. I'll be back on Tuesday for this big game here between the Celtics and the Cavs. Of course, show some love to our sponsors, Prize Picks. Use the code CLNS tomorrow over there. Play a $5 lineup. Get $50 instantly. Check out Game Time if you want to go to Celtics Cavs on Tuesday, an NBA Cup game. Check it out. CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And, of course, HelloFresh. Go get free breakfast of life over there. And they're great meal kit to your door when you want it at HelloFresh.com/freegarden. Last thing before we sign off here, Sherrod, did you like the jerseys or not, seeing them up close?
I did. I liked them better than I thought I would, to be honest with you. And so that was definitely coming in thinking, like, I don't know how this is going to work. But seeing them up close and personal, yeah, I'm cool with the jerseys.
They're not horrendous, but I don't like them. I like the gray ones from years back more than these, actually, and that was the worst Celtics jersey ever at the time. So I'm not a fan
of the gray ones. Yeah, I didn't like the gray ones.
I'm gonna put these at worst, and they haven't had many jerseys in Celtics history, but this one to me is the worst. So Raptors have a great one. I wish they wore theirs tonight, but those are some of my favorite uniforms in the NBA. Not a lot of Raptors fans in here, Sherrod, though, like the old days.
No.
2-11, I guess we'll do that to you. But a great game tonight, fun to watch. Thanks to Sherrod for hanging out for over an hour here. Thanks to Noah, who's finishing up Tatum's interview over there, and we're going to do a hit on his night, his game winner, and a big night for the Celtics here at TD Garden. They're back here on Tuesday. Celtics, Cavs, the main event. We'll have coverage and the full crew, I'm sure, for that one. So thanks again for watching. Subscribe, Celtics All Access, CLNS Media, all our channels. Check out Sherrod's Big 3 podcast, which just came out today, right? Or yesterday?
Yesterday, yep.
So a new episode of that out right now with Gary Washburn. And we will talk to you on Tuesday. Good night.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Phenomenal game.
Horford's out. I think it's an option.
That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.